Hey there, I am so glad you're here. Come on in and enjoy Coffee Chat at the Cubbyhole. Okay, you might be thinking, coffee sounds fun, but girl, what is the Cubbyhole? The Cubbyhole was a divine little nudge on my heart, if you will, to build this space in our basement, in our home, where our friends and family could come and receive encouragement and love. And that's exactly what we've been doing. I've always known that the Cubbyhole would have a ripple effect out into the world, that it could bring encouragement and hope, not just to people that could visit here in person. That is exactly why I do Coffee Chats. I get to take some of the coolest people that are just like you and just like me, who have skill and talent, but most importantly, they have a vulnerable, relatable story that we can all glean some hope and encouragement from. So grab a coffee, cozy up, and enjoy Coffee Chats at the Cubbyhole. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to Coffee Chats at the Cubbyhole. I am so glad you are here. Today is going to be powerful. The question that I posed about today's Coffee Chat is, where do you find hope when life isn't so funny? I know that in our world, there's some major issues going on in our world. Lots of things that we agree on or disagree on, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. But really what it boils down to that God put on my heart today is that sometimes we can't do much about the big things and the hurts in our world, but we can do something about the small little moments in our own world, in our own lives. If you know me and you know this show and you know what I do, my passion is each of us and our stories. They matter so much. And if you are a person who is walking through your life feeling like, I have had pain, I have had suffering, or I've had shame, I have had guilt, I've done too many things, it's too late to repair them, that isn't true. There is so much hope. You know, I talk a lot about the circumstances in our life. And sometimes we can't do anything about the circumstances in our life. And those circumstances lead to the beliefs that we anchor in about who we are and then how we feel about ourselves. And then that leads to the actions that we take. And sometimes those actions are really powerful and wonderful. And sometimes they're powerful and not so wonderful. They're filled with anger and rage and shame. And then that becomes the story that we tell ourselves one way or the other. Our problems are always going to be part of our story. But what if? That's what today's talk about. What if your story has become your problem and you feel hopeless and helpless? Well, that is exactly what we are going to be talking about today with my incredible guest. Today I am joined by the highly acclaimed, highly respected comedian Jeff Allen. There's a million places you might have seen Jeff Allen. He has been performing comedy for 4 decades. You might have seen him on Showtime, Comedy Central, VH1, his Dry Bar specials, which have had millions of views. He's had countless specials in movies, and he's even spent time overseas entertaining the troops in the Persian Gulf. He has done so much. He's a father who has lived through raising teenagers. He is married to his beautiful wife, Tammy, for many, many years. And as the show goes, though, we love what each guest does in their life. But it's about their vulnerable, relatable story. And Jeff has such an incredibly powerful story of redemption. And as he was saying, one of the videos that he's done that has received millions of views, if any of them, it's the one where he talked about his story and his marriage and his life to his wife, Tammy. So without further ado, I want to welcome my incredible guest, Jeff Allen. Oh, hey.
Popped up.
How are you, Jeff? Good morning.
I'm well. We're done raining finally. So
same here in Michigan. I hope
I was getting ready to look up what a cubit was just to see if I could build the right arc.
You had plans. You're like, what am I going to do? You know, it's raining. We're going to have to do something. Tell us about your shirt. I love that.
Tammy bought me this from the series The Chosen. Anyway, we're supporting them any way we can. So anyway, she bought me a shirt. And
I love it.
Binge Jesus. I don't even know what that means, but I'm on board. Since
on board. You're like, I like the shirt, I like the colors, and I like the idea. That is awesome. Right. And we're loving The Chosen too. If anybody doesn't know about that, you can find it on YouTube or on their app, The Chosen.
On their app, yeah, The Chosen. Yeah. And matter of fact, they've got it worked out where you can mirror it on your television, and we were able to do it, and we are illiterate when it comes. I've tried mirroring our Sunday services from church, and it just never works out. So whatever they've done at VidAngel to get their app working, it's all of a sudden it just pops up on your TV, and you go, "Wow, it works!" My gosh!
And now we can binge Jesus. We can watch it.
So which means they can idiot-proof anything. They just choose not to.
That's right. I'm with you. I am with you. Technology. You and I have had some conversations about that this week. Not my thing, but here we are. Yes. And I'm so thankful that the internet is holding out over there. Here on both of our ends. So yes. I'd love to get rolling because your story is so powerful. I loved my conversation with you this week, and it just warmed my heart. First of all, your willingness to be so vulnerable and open to share your story, because you know the truth that once we walk through our story, when we can share with others, it can bring such power. So if you wouldn't mind just, with diving in, I was just mentioning, Tammy and your marriage, and I know that you're a believer. Life wasn't always that way. So wherever you want to start with the goodness of your story that you share, just dive right in.
Well, we were talking last week. So anyway, I met Tammy at a comedy club. She was a waitress, and she had this beautiful laugh. She was in the back of the room, and she was a smoker at the time. So I don't care what anybody says. Smokers have the best laugh. When you cannot get oxygen into your lungs, that's music to a comic's ears. So there was this woman in the back, kind of gasping for breath. Anyway, I perked up and said, "I want to meet this one." And anyway, I had a chance to look at her, and she was just absolutely stunning. That week, that was probably a Tuesday night, so I just decided to follow her around. And basically, by today's standards, I stalked her.
Yes, exactly. That's what they call it now.
It was only illegal in the 80s if you were creepy, and I wasn't creepy. I just followed her around like a puppy until she finally noticed me, and we started going out after shows. And she had a morning job waitressing as well. She was a single mom. And that impressed me, the fact that she had two jobs just working on raising her kid, And I met Aaron, who was 2 at the time. And anyway, I went back to LA, and for whatever reason, that somewhere in my heart and soul, I thought this one was different than all the other waitresses that I had met on the road. And I actually kind of cut off ties with everybody else that I had around the country, like a sailor in like a port.
Yes, exactly. Right. You found the one. You found.
Yeah, and anyway, I met her in November, and then January I flew her and the son out to California, and we went to Disney World or Disneyland, and then about April I think I was flying, and I maybe seen her 10 or 12 times in 4 months. Not a lot. As much as you can hook up when you're couple thousand miles apart. Right. And I decided to ask her to marry me, and I did at baggage claim Cleveland Airport, because it doesn't come through the technology, but romance courses through every pore in my body.
And the baggage claim.
I did. It was baggage claim. It's so funny. I've paid the price. Believe me, when we're watching movies and some guy does it right, where he gets on one knee and he asks, I asked the father for the hand of the daughter in the marriage. Everything is done right. Special place. Really thought out. Tammy's like crying in the over Lost, whatever. And I look at her. I go, "I'm sorry. I'll do it again." She goes, "Too late. My story's baggage claim." So to my credit, pre-COVID last year, we were in Israel, and one of the best places in the world to buy diamonds is Israel. And I went into one of the diamond merchants when she wasn't paying attention, and I actually bought, because her favorite stone is ruby. So I bought her a new engagement ring. And the night I was on stage, I was with Governor Mike Huckabee on this trip. And I asked Mike, I said, oh, could I want to ask Tammy to marry me again and do it right? And I didn't realize how nervous I would be. I choked. I forgot to get on. At one point, Tammy whispers to me, get on one knee. You know?
Don't forget this time. This is our
get on one knee. So anyway, I got down. I re-asked her to marry me. I said, you have a new story now, Israel. You know, it was 33 years into our marriage, but I wanted to change the baggage claim thing. So anyway, you know, my story is that we picked up our luggage and we left, and we were engaged, and she had no idea the baggage she picked up that day. Here it is, right in front of you, right here, all the baggage. I was an alcoholic, drug addict, and I'm not making light of that, but it was 30-some years ago. But it was like I was a heck of a catch, is what I'm trying to say. I was an alcoholic, drug addict. I always said if they had dating apps back then, my profile would have been, you know, alcoholic, drug addict with rage issues, looking for a woman to overlook aforementioned character flaws. You know?
Perfect. I'm in. That's what Tammy would have said. You know what? I got to just say, how cool is it that your story began in baggage claim, though? Because that's what your story became. You guys started like collecting and then unpacking all of the, like you and I were talking about with your story. It's all this quote unquote baggage. And I think it's beautiful, actually, because you guys
for the good metaphor. I said God gave me some kind of illustration for the church back, you know, before I knew him. Wow. But it was I don't know who said it. I don't know if it was Carl Jung. Somebody said that children spend their entire childhood gathering up things, putting them in a big, large bag on their back. And the lucky ones spend their entire adult life emptying the bag. That's the lucky ones. We get to, those are the ones, you know. And then it was Aristotle said, or one of them, I don't know, said, an unexamined life is not worth living. So if you examine your life, you see the baggage, and then you just begin peeling it one at a time. You just begin to empty the baggage, and the burden gets lighter as you dig deep or inside.
Yes.
And nobody gets away. I said neurotic free. I mean, we all, it's not even in the best of childhoods, you come away with something.
Oh gosh, that's what you and I were talking about, is all the stories from childhood that then, you know, we have well-intended people in our lives, and we are too as parents. We try to do the best we can. Our parents try to do the best they could. Their parents tried. And somewhere along the way we pick up things that maybe we carry on, and you were talking about that, about how sometimes the things in our life can cause, well, what ends up maybe being an anger, but really it's from a sadness. And you were sharing the stories of what happened in your marriage, how you and Tammy were, you know, you're probably going along fine when you guys got married and got together, but then things started to take a turn, and it was all from that deep-rooted stuff, right? I might have lost Jeff. Are you there, Jeff?
There we are. We're
back. There we go.
Yeah. But when you were talking about the sadness, that's I guess the best story that I could tell to kind of sum up the kind of man I was when we got married. There was a time where we got into an argument, and I stood on a stool in our kitchen, and I yelled at Tammy till she fell to her knees and just sobbed. And then I put my son away to bed that night, and he goes, "Daddy, you win." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You yell, Mommy cries, and you win." And not one of my prouder moments.
Right.
But we use these things, I did anyway, as catalysts for change. You know, those are the bottoming out. Somebody called them pivot points in our lives. We just get to a point where something happens, and then you pivot in another direction. And that's when I went to a meeting that night, and I had started a 12-step program. And probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years earlier. Anyway, I went to a meeting that night, and I said, "Does anybody know a therapist? I need some help, and I need to navigate our way through this." And it was interesting because Tammy and I sat together for they had to separate us. We couldn't sit in the same room and have an adult conversation. It was he said, she said, she said, he said, "Yeah, but you know." Finally, the counselor said, "Jeff, you got to get out of here and go sit in the hallway." You know, and Tammy went a couple times, and she said, "I'm not going anymore. All I do is cry." And I said, "Maybe that's a good thing. You know, I don't know, but I'm going because I didn't like the kind of man I was. I didn't, like the kind of father.
Right.
I wanted to be a better man,
Right.
and I didn't really know what that meant. I don't know what it looked like. I just, and one of the things Tammy said in one of the meetings that when we were sitting together, I remember the counselor asked us, "What do you want out of our time together?" Which is a legitimate. Every therapist should ask that.
Right.
What do you
What
want?
do you want? Right.
What do you want from this? And I'll be honest with you. I remember going and wanted permission to divorce. Really, I wanted her to hear my story, pat my hand, tell me, "Poor man, you need to let this woman go." And she looked right into my soul and said, "If you came here for permission to divorce, you came to the wrong counselor."
Wow.
And I sat there and went, "Oh no, I had no way, man. I want this to work out." But one of the things Tammy said was, and this was to me, this is it. She goes, "I wanted him to be. I want him to be the way he was when we met.
Mm-hmm.
He was so much nicer then."
Mm-hmm.
And the counselor kind of laughed and said, "It'll never be that way." And again, but it's just, the courtship period is and then she gave me, my counselor gave me my first self-help book, Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things Scott Peck talked about was true love can't even begin to exist in a relationship until conflict enters the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And what we wanted was conflict-free marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And counselor said it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a deep truth. Even my relationship with Jesus, I realize it's not conflict-free. I mean, I have questions. I have things. I don't like sometimes the way he's running my universe.
Right. I have some questions for you, Jesus. Well, the good thing is when she said it'll never be the same, that's also really great too, because it has, I mean, it's taken many years, right, to transcend through all.
Well, it did. It was not, it wasn't this smooth thing. There was this ebb and flow, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, to our marriage, and for me, it was just, okay, I'll get sober, I'll get off the drugs and the alcohol. And that's when really the cap came off the anger.
Mm-hmm.
I got more enraged. I used to say I was a walking wound. And there was a big scab when I got into recovery. And over time, the scab gets healed, or the wound gets more healed, and like in this thing, and eventually it's just this tiny. But it took me a long time. I was not a poster boy for the 12-step program. This is why it's an anonymous program. It really is, because lest you be the advertising, the calling card. Well, if he's the end result of that, then I'm not going. So I would not be here without those people, without the thousands of strangers in rooms all around the world. Actually, I went to meetings everywhere, and they listened to me whine and complain, and I remember some old lady came over to me. She came up to probably my belly button. That's how short she was. And she pokes me. She says, "Young man, can I say something to you?" I said, "Please do." And I'm gritting my teeth. And she said, "I've been listening to you for quite a while. And maybe the problem isn't your wife. Maybe it's you."
Wow. See, the little angel.
I wanted to hit her in the head. I wanted to hit her right on the head, drive her head into her chest cavity. And it was one of those. I learned to listen to those as seeds that got planted.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I went into a church, somebody said, "Are you religious?" I said, "No, I don't believe in God." And he said, "Well," he goes, "this worked for me." He said, "Churches are open during the day, most of them. So I would just stop in and sit in the pews, just sit there and let the calmness wash over me." So one day I didn't want to go home because I was angry over something. Somebody probably looked at me, and anyway, I saw a church. I remembered what the guy said, and I went in and I sat in those pews, and I just started sobbing, just sobbing. I just, again, a walking wound, but again, that calmness, and that was kind of the beginning of, I wonder if there's something to this. I don't know. So that was kind of my search for years, was, does God exist? And I couldn't have
Right.
articulated it, but if in hindsight I look back and go, that's really what it was, because I kept hearing the people I was attracted to, the calmest and sanest people, all seem to have some connection to God, you know. So it was, you know, and I've had people contact me over the years. Just, I wish I could. I wish I could. I just can't. I just can't get my head around. I can't get my heart around. I can't. I just can't. And I understand that, you know, because for years I couldn't.
What was your journey before? I think a lot of people relate with this. I know for a fact, a lot of people that watch the show relate with the fact that maybe they don't have a faith journey at all. They don't want to hear anything about it. What was your history there with faith and your belief and
I'm sorry, you have to back up. I lost you again. I'm telling you, you know, we talked about this. My wife, I live in the country.
Yeah.
You know, I put a satellite dish on my dog's head and just have him sit next to me.
Send it out in the yard.
Yeah.
I know we can't see you at all. It's just basically a picture. Part of me feels like maybe we should just stop and go and have you move upstairs so we can hear you and see you. But if we can always keep moving and maybe just, you know, redo it later or something. But if you're having trouble hearing me, if you can hear me, then we'll just keep moving.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So I was just asking, I was saying a lot of people that watch this show don't have a faith journey. They don't want to hear about it at all. They just have been intimidated by maybe a church or a religion, and that is not the answer for them because they don't want to hear it. What was your journey growing up and in your early years? Like you said, you found yourself crying in a church and you knew there was something to it, but you were now leading into that.
Yeah, well, growing up, my father, who was raised by a pastor, turned his back on the faith and you know, was an atheist, a claimed atheist, but he spent most of his life railing against this God he didn't believe in. So there was a certain irony to that. And my mother, I did not know this until she was dying, but she got saved at a Billy Graham crusade. And she always had a quiet faith, a very quiet faith, because I was unaware of it. But my aunts, her sisters, told me that no, your mother has always been a prayer, and which explained a lot, because with all the insane men in her life, my brother, me, and my father, she was always this calm in the storm. We used to call her Saint Arlene because she put up with so much stuff. But anyway, I really had no religious baggage. Let's say that. You go to these 12-step rooms, and people are piled with religious baggage, people who were abused by people in church and all and everything. So I didn't have to overcome any of that. I really was a blank slate. And I was willing to try and do anything because I wanted to stay sober. As a matter of fact, the first day I was there, somebody came over to me and I said, "Are your first day?" I go, "I am." He goes, "Do you have any faith in your life?" I said, "No, I don't do that." And he said, "I recommend you a prayer that was out of the big book." And anyway, I recited that prayer every morning along with the serenity prayer. And it was, "God, remove me from the bondage of self so that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties so that victory over them others may bear witness to thy strength, thy power, and thy way of life." I had no idea what I was praying, but it came to me years later when I was standing in a church bearing witness to all these difficulties that God has removed me from. And I realized that was the answer to the prayer. And it took years. And then, but I did what I was told. And that was the important thing. And it's interesting, whereas I have my brother, on the other hand, when he went into these 12-step rooms, everybody was an idiot. Everybody was a jerk. I'm not doing this stuff. And I went in and just said, "Look, they're sober. I'm not. So what did you do?" And I'm going to do it. I don't care what it is. And I had an open enough mind about God to at least allow God to work in my life. And I just had to exhaust. And I exhausted the world, basically. I started with self-help. I went to New Age, Buddhism. I went to finally humanism. I wound up on Ayn Rand. I forgot. I was in New York and I heard a guy refer to Ronald Reagan as a capitalistic swine. And I remember riding home thinking, what's a capitalist? I had no idea what a capitalist was. And it hits me like a freight train. You're an idiot. You're really an uneducated moron. You make your livings with words and you don't even know what a basic word. So I went home and I looked it up and I thought, well, gee, what's wrong with that? I had no idea that was a bad thing. Even when I read the definition, I go, why is that a bad thing?
Right.
I don't know. We all want to make some money, and,
Yeah.
and I understand that, So anyway, I started reading and looking up words. I picked up a book from Ayn Rand just because I don't know. I was just at the airport and I saw this philosopher, Ayn Rand. So I picked it up. I was looking up 5 words a page. It was an arduous journey to get through a pamphlet because I wanted to educate. So then I bought a book on SAT scores and I started educating myself in my 30s. And along with all of that came the therapy with the counselors. I would not be sitting here today without without an open mind, a willing heart to allow other ideas and other things in, and then you just kind of sift them through your soul.
Yes.
And again, the attractive people to me were men who had a relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And I that was the one common thread that if I found myself wanting to be around other men, I would eventually get to their stories, and they all had a relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point you can't ignore it, And then God put this man in my life, a businessman that put the Bible in my home. And
you referred to Blaise Pascal's quote, or what he says is that you had a God-sized hole in your heart, and it took you a while, right, to realize it. But then once you were off on that journey, that was really the answer. Ultimately,
right.
Not.
It's almost as if God said, it's funny. When I share at churches, I'll tell them you can go in any bookstore in America if you can find one now. But if you go into a bookstore like Barnes and Noble, the shelves are full of man's attempt to find meaning apart from God.
Yes.
You said the Bible sits all covered in dust, off into the corner. Has changed in 2,000 years, and it just says the same thing. Knock, come.
A pivotal moment for you. I was just talking about pivotal moments, how we can go back and reframe and reshape and relearn our lives and our stories and our beliefs. And one of those pivotal moments for you was when you stumbled on, maybe I'm not sure how you landed on Ecclesiastes about things being meaningless.
Well, that was the guy, the businessman. He was at that time. We hadn't discussed this, but Tammy and I had filled out divorce papers, and we were 10 minutes from the courthouse. We had them notarized. All we had to do was file them, and our marriage was over. And she changed her mind, and we went home, and it was around that time that God put this man in my life. I found out about him. He was a golfer, a wealthy golfer, could get me on places like Augusta National. Yeah. And, if you had something I wanted, I could be fairly charming, So I wasn't always just this. Tammy said to me, she goes, you kind of remind me of Jeff Dunham's Walter. I go, I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, I sought this man out. I told my agent I want to work with this guy, and he was just starting out. He had sold his businesses. He just wanted to do comedy. He was 10 or 15 years older than me, and the one common thing we had was golf, and he had money. And at this time, I'm trying to figure out. Our marriage was still shaky, really shaky. And I thought if we had filed bankruptcy, and so anyway, I was going to pick his brain on how do you accumulate wealth, because I felt like a lot of people, if we just had more money,
right,
things would be a lot better. So anyway, first thing he says to me was, you don't want a lot of money. I go, I don't. Why wouldn't I? Because you can't handle what little you have.
Right.
He says it would be a burden to you, and it would just be. And I have met people who have had a lot of money and lost it, and they've never recovered from that. It's it destroyed their lives. The fact that they'll never get it back. In their mind, they'll never get it back. But anyway, then he said you can't even begin to enjoy the creation till you have a relationship with the one who created it. And I thought, man, that's really cool. And again, I'm an avid reader. So I said, where'd you read that? He says, well, it's in the Bible about the relationship. And anyway, okay, a couple holes went by. He said something else. I go, that's great. Where'd you read that? He goes, it's in the Bible. I go, stop it with the Bible. Really?
Yeah. A lot of people do that. I love that you called that out, because a lot of people really feel that way. Just stop talking to me about it. And you said it. And very relatable. Very relatable.
He says, well, what's your problem? And I said, well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in, I don't believe in God. I mean, God's word. That's even a little more archaic. So he says, well, let's back up. What's in the Bible you don't think is true? I go, I don't know. I never read the Bible. He goes, then you're not really an atheist. You're a moron. He's yeah, we were off to a good start.
Right there. That was good.
We were off to a good start in our friendship. But you need men in your life. You need men in your life. Every man needs somebody in their life to tell them the truth. I mean, really, somebody like that. And the fact that he didn't know this, but he was lording these golf courses over my head. Believe me, if he had nothing I wanted, I dusted the dirt off my sandals and left. But I wanted what he had. And there was something else. And I didn't know this. But again, oddly enough, attracted to a man who had a deep relationship with Christ. And before we left the end of the week, and we talked about a lot of stuff, but he said, I like you. And I had, looking back, I had no reason why. I was a foul-mouthed, angry, bitter, jaded, cynical. At one point, he said to me, why do you work comedy dirty? I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you don't need to work dirty. You're smart enough. And I said, I'd rather be an accountant than work clean. And he's still a dear friend of mine. And every now and then he'll go, hey, how's the accounting business? Oh, shut up. I got to live that down. So before he left, he signed me up for Denton, Texas, Tommy Nelson's Denton Bible Church, Bible tapes. He has a tape ministry. And he said, can I send you a Bible? And you can send me whatever you want, as long as it doesn't cost me any money. So we left on Monday, and on Thursday, I think my Bible came in the mail. And I threw it in a junk drawer, and then the tapes started coming a couple weeks later. And I was still trying to figure all this stuff out on my own. And again, people telling me what you need is a higher power, and I go, I know that, but what is that? I mean, if I'm making up a deity, that makes me delusional. I wanted something that was real. I didn't want something that I made up on my own. A Band-Aid, a salve for the soul. Because when you get on your knees,
if I believe in a deity, then I'm delusional. I think a lot of people, they've felt that. So I appreciate you saying that, because it's what people often feel. And you're speaking.
Well, that's it. I mean, you're on your knees in the middle of a storm, the death of a child, or a cancer, or a loss of a job, and you feel like the whole world is caving in. And I love that picture of the bird stuck between the in the midst of a hurricane. Mm-hmm. And Jesus has got you. You're covered. You're sheltered. That tiny little crack in the thing. But while this thing rages around you.
Yeah.
So I just said, look, I'm not making something up. I want to know. And anyway, we had a friendship going for a while, and we always ended the same. We talked sports, golf, politics, things that guys talk about. But it always ended the same way with Phil. He'd go, how are you and Tammy doing? And at that time, not too well. That's what I tell him. Not good. I think she's going to leave me. I can't stop raging. And he said, we pray for your marriage every night. And I meant nothing to me. I go, why would you do that? He goes, we just don't think that you guys, marriages are ordained from God. Mm-hmm. God put you two together. And then he quoted the verse, Jesus said, when you get married, you become one flesh. And in hindsight, looking back, that is, whether you believe that to be the word of God or a metaphor, I'm telling you, it was exactly, when our marriage was splitting up, it was like flesh tearing. It was like, it was that painful. And it's an anxiety that you can't see, touch, taste, or smell. But you feel it. It's an existential, you can feel it. So when someone says to me, I need to see, touch, feel, or taste God, and I can't, so therefore he doesn't exist. I go, you can't see, touch, taste, or feel love, but you know it.
Yeah.
You know it.
And you know, what you were probably also going through is that this is just gut wrenching for you, you know, for your marriage to end, but you didn't have you were trying to find the answers, but what bravery, because your answers used to be in counterfeit comforts, and now you've got the Band-Aids are off, you're fully exposed, and now you're on this journey of healing, and you're searching for the answers. Thank God you were able to find them. And I love what you said. You might have referred to this before, but I know you talked about it the other day, that true love can't happen until conflict enters in. And so I'm just loving your story, because from the little woman that said this, and then this man with the golf course, and all these little, I call them God sprinkles. They're part of a tapestry that it just all got. Jesus was the weave in between it all. And they're just showing up. You're doing your job, you're questioning.
Yeah, it's interesting that I lost. The older I get. You know,
well, no, Jeff, I wanted to say too, it's really, really courageous and brave of you to go on that journey, because you said that growing up, you know, you weren't allowed to question in your home. And I know that God wants us to question, because when we question, that's the sustainable change comes when we question and we get the answers, and we're not just, oh no, like sometimes when you're growing up, sometimes we do that to our kids, you know, just listen to me and don't ask any questions. And when it's not sustainable. So you are
I asked my children to question my authority. If we ask you to do something, and I always started with asking, I said, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to make you. So let's just get to the point where I ask you to do something. And if you have a problem with that, ask me why. And if I don't have an answer, you don't have to do it. And my favorite story was I was on the road, and 5 minutes before I'm hitting the stage, I get a phone call to the front desk at the hotel. There was a show at a hotel. So I'm thinking this is an emergency. So I run down there, and my son was probably 7 or 8 at the time, and this squeaky little voice goes, "Dad?" And I said, "What is it, son?" "Daddy's got to go to work." And I hear Tammy in the background go, "Tell him what you just told me." So I'm thinking, uh-oh. So anyway, he says, "Dad, because I'm 8 now, I can back talk mommy, right?" And I said, "Son, I'm 30 some years old. I don't back talk your mother." No, you can't back talk your mother. So I said, what does she want you to do that you don't want to do? Because that's what it always is. And he said, "I don't want to take a bath." And I said, "Well, you have to take a bath, because otherwise you get germs, and then you smell, and we don't want a smelly, germy kid running around our house." So anyway, that was it. He hangs up. He goes, "Okay." And then Tammy gets on the phone. "Do you believe that? You believe that?" I said, "Yes, I do. Tam, I do believe that." I said, "He's just stretching his legs. That's all, man."
Oh, letting.
But I'll tell you what. And one of my favorite stories was, I knew I was turning the corner on fatherhood when Aaron gets into a fight at school. And this isn't Aaron. He just isn't like this. And I learned that children act out their feelings when they're frustrated. And Aaron had a hard time verbalizing frustration, so he hit his brother or things. So anyway, I call home, and Tammy goes, "He got in a fight at school. They're concerned." And I said, "Put him on the phone." So anyway, he gets on the phone. It took me 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of, "Come on, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" And it was during the early 90s in the Iraq war. And he goes, you fly on an airplane, and there's bombs in the sky, and you're going to get blown up, and you're never going to come home. I know.
Yeah.
I said, "Wow, that's a heavy thing to carry, my man."
Wow.
But I said, "I'm okay." I said, "You know why? Because we have people that are taking care of that." And as a matter of fact, we had a neighbor that would train pilots at Litchfield Air Force Base. So I said, "You go down and you talk to Mr. Duke, and then I'll call you tomorrow." So I called him the next day. I said, "Did you talk to Mr. Duke?" He said, "I did." And I said, "What'd he say?" He said, "We're kicking ass."
That's awesome.
It was. And he was fine. And I said, "That's the difference between my father
Right.
would have said, stop it, don't do it.
Right.
And then that would have cured nothing. It would have just stuffed whatever the anxiety was deeper in the side of me. And that's what we were talking about. You get sad, 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 and then eventually anger covers the sadness.
Yep.
And then you got to spend a whole lifetime digging through the anger to get to what was the sadness in the first place.
Yes.
And so anyway, I remember thinking, good on me for that.
Yeah.
I did. I thought,
awesome.
So all of that learning, paid off in dealing with, understanding children.
It was all part of a journey that you were meant to have, that you were able then we can break generational chains. And it doesn't matter where in the journey, if we didn't start off so great as parents and we did the things that maybe from the generational chains. And I'm sure our parents, they might have regret. And and just imagine the older people that are just living and sitting in the regret. And there's so much pain in families, and that you were able to change the trajectory of your son's life in that moment that's just part of the story. And it's
Tammy was saying it the other day. She said, it was probably a month ago. She said, one, if I'd have known you were going to turn out the way it turned out, I would have had more kids with you. I thought that's a compliment in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, she said, we would be so much better at it now. Yeah. And we would. I don't know anybody. I haven't talked to one parent yet that's my age that doesn't have regrets. Not one.
Right.
Because as you mature and get older, it took us a while to figure out the whole dinner thing, but fortunately we caught it, and we've realized that they have their own built-in nutritional system. All you do is plunk food in front of them, and they'll figure out, they'll tank up on proteins for 7 days, and then they'll eat carbs, and they'll eat, they're fine. They're fine.
I want to go on to your comedy in a second, but I want to say that another of the pivotal moments for you, which I love this. I know so many people who've alluded to things like this, but you were watching a gerbil. And what lessons did you get watching a gerbil?
My gerbil. I was sitting there looking at him, and Tammy finally come by walking there, and she goes, "What's with you and the gerbil?" And I said, "Well, look at it." She goes, "I do, but I don't get the. Obviously, you see something in there I don't." And it was the gerbil gets sticks on one side of the crate and then runs them over to the other side, stacks them up, and then that's what he does all day long, just moving sticks, piling them up. And every now and then he spins the wheel we put in there for entertainment or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, that's our lives. She goes, "What are you talking about?" And I go, "Look, if we buy things, they wear out, we take them to the landfill, and then we buy more things, they wear out, we take them to the landfill. Yeah. Those are our sticks. Every now and then we go to Disney World with the kids, or Vegas for us, and that's our entertainment." And I'm projecting 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. I go, "If that's life, I'm checking out." And she looked at me and said, "You checked out years ago. You haven't been here for years." And I just, again, it's that God-shaped hole Pascal talks about. We want to stuff the world into this hole that's inside of us. And it's just the only thing that can fill it is the Spirit of God. That's it, to sate it. Otherwise, it's just more and more. And that's what I said. If I get a sitcom deal, movie deal, we get nicer things. But eventually they all wind up in the landfill. And I think at the end of all of this, people are going to look at the landfills in America, and they're going to look at the death of materialism, I hope. Mm-hmm. And people are going to get deeper back into the things that really matter. And that's faith, family, friends. And I think COVID, somebody said, I heard this, and it was really profound. COVID, we weren't exposed to COVID. We were exposed by COVID.
Oh, wow, that's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
So many silver linings and so many truths have come out of this, for the good and the bad.
Well, you found out how strong your marriage was. I mean, Tammy told me at 30 days, she goes, "I've been waiting for this. You've never been home 30 consecutive days in our entire marriage."
That's awesome.
And I said, "That's not true." She goes, "It is. Actually, I've been waiting to say it." And I was home 5 months, and I'd love to tell you that it was a smooth sail for 5 months.
Everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, we kind of hit a road about 45 days into it, and I'm just going, "Am I ever going to work again?" I'm going, and again, there are things, as a as a provider.
Provider, right.
And you look around,
Yeah.
and that was one of the things early in our marriage when it was all caving in on us. Tammy comes to me, she says, I get the impression you don't care about all this. And I said, one, I don't. And that bothers me. And that's what she said. Who doesn't care? I go, look, I wake up in the morning and I look around, I know the responsibility. I know it. We were 2 or 3 months behind on our mortgage, and they repossessed a car.
Yeah.
She called me on the road while I was, she goes, you knew this was coming, you coward. And she was right. I did. I knew they told me they were going to come and repossess the car. So here's my boys in the driveway crying because somebody's taking their daddy's car.
Mm-hmm.
And,
very relatable. Very relatable. I think a lot of people can relate with that. That's why I appreciate
the apathy. That's what I was talking to you about. If people are in a relationship today that's full of acrimony, wait till they get to apathy. When you just don't care. I mean, that's the worst place in my life I've ever been. It's just you shut down so much because it's just too painful to care.
Yeah.
Because of everything, and again, it's the information you have is all you got to work with. Mm. And if you think you're a pile of garbage, which I did, then why wouldn't you bring all of that in? This is what garbage creates, more garbage. Mm-hmm. So it was the finally the acceptance of Christ. And it was as a child, I didn't know what I was doing. I just got on my knees and said, look, this is yours. This pile of trash is yours. In
the landfill, it can all be recycled. It's not always the end when it goes in the landfill. I also love, I want to go back to you as a dad. I want people that are watching this just to glean so much hope from you, because as we were talking about what you repress and push down, it'll be expressed somewhere. And that's what happened for you. And the pain, those scabs that you talked about in your own life became smaller and smaller. But in your kids' life, they get to see the good, the bad, the ugly, but they get to see the other side, the redemption, the healing. And I'm praying that people that watch this will feel that in their own life, whatever's going on, whether it's parenting or whatever. So I really, really appreciate the vulnerability.
And it's never too late.
No.
It's never too late to just make that decision where you get up in the morning and go, I'm no longer going to live in this. I'm just not.
I want to put this scripture up because it goes along with what you're saying. And you've gained notoriety. You've gained things in your life. Life has ebbed and flowed. But you said that this scripture meant a lot to you. All things are wearisome. More than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ears it's full of hearing. So tell everybody why that meant so much to you.
Well, at that time we had DVD. We had a DVD library of 100 videos, which is not, extensive, but it was, the eyes never get enough of seeing. There's just never enough, enough. And then the ears, I mean, how many songs do you have on your iPod or your Spotify now or whatever? It's just, we are insatiable beings. And we live in a culture today that if you don't have the money to get it, they'll get it to you anyway. The reason my car got repossessed, I didn't think they'd even give me a car. I just wanted to go down and salve a wound. Well, let's look at new cars. I do the joke now about Tammy caught me looking at women in swimsuits in the Sports Illustrated, and she says, "Oh, what are you looking at that for?" I go, "Same reason you look at multi-million-dollar homes." They're attractive, and I'll never own them. I'll never, so it's
oh my God.
Time. But that's, again, as beings, we want and want and want and want and want, and it's never enough. And
you know what? It's interesting.
God says, "I'm enough for you." God says, "My grace is sufficient for you." And it's this twist and pull of my earthly sinful nature of wanting more, and then God telling me, "I'm enough for you. I'm enough for you." In the middle of a storm, in the middle of losing things, in the middle of a pandemic, where you don't know if you're going to get back to work or not, and then it's like, what am I going to do? I had friends that went to work at Target, and I looked at Tammy and I go, I can't do that. I'm a crotchety old man. They would fire me. Walmart greeter. What do you want? That's how I would greet people at Walmart. What do you want? It's a big place. I don't know anything about it.
Oh, cool though. You walk in Target, you're just going in for some, socks. And Jeff Allen's like, hey, get a cart and go.
Yeah. That's how bad
that's
COVID
awesome.
got.
I gotta go.
I was blessed.
Oh.
We made it through the 5 months, and then I'm back to work. So
then that's so awesome. I love hearing that you're back to work because the world needs you and you're funny. But I want to go back to what you said about people don't even know what they want. Now, what was I going to say about that? We're looking for something, but we don't know what it is. That's why when COVID first started, people were doing the counterfeit comforts. Well, I went to the grocery store one day and the whole wine, all the boxed wine, all the wine was gone. And everybody's talking about Tiger King, which we did watch. Binge, we talk about binge watching. They're looking for the thing that they always thought that they needed. And now we were quarantined. We can't go anywhere. And they're going to do the things they always thought they wanted to do. But then they realized they didn't. It was a God-sized hole oftentimes. And so many people through COVID started to feel angry and sad and doing counterfeit comforts, leaning on it. But it was because our lives often feel out of control anyway. And you get an out of control pandemic, that just heightens what people are already going through. So I love that you're talking about how you guys journeyed through the pandemic together, but you're not alone. You're not alone with everything that you said about it. No. I have to ask you, okay, so you are this very highly respected comedian, millions and millions of views, lots and lots of shows, specials, you name it. And you're telling these stories about your life. How did you get on stage? And how were you funny when, like I said in the beginning, life was anything but funny? How did you do it?
Well, it's interesting. In the club days before I became a believer, it was harder and harder. I got to the point where I sat on a stool by the end of that life, and that's what we look at it as, the end of life. It's again, whether you believe it or not, I'm born again, began a new life. And when we stopped at 10 minutes from the courthouse, that marriage ended. 10 minutes from that courthouse. In my eyes, we divorced. That was it. And then we turned around, went home as a married couple with a different path. Maybe we didn't know it consciously, but there was a different path forming. So it was hard. There were times I would look at the floor. I remember my favorite story. I was in Michigan, late show Saturday night, 11 o'clock. It was a hockey rink. There had like 400 people in this hockey rink. And I'm sitting on a stool. I can barely get a routine out. And one point I go, what are we here for? Why are we here? And this little voice in the back, some woman goes, we just want some jokes. I said, that's legit. That is legitimate.
All right, good answer.
You did pay your money. You did pay your money. And I said, I owe you that. And it kind of brought me out of that. But I remember agents were calling our club owners were calling my agents and going, what's wrong with him, man? He's just really lost it. And I was constantly inside this, between the ears. Why does it matter? What does it matter? What's the point? What's the point? And that was some of our biggest fights, because Tammy would sit there and try to shake me into existence, being alive. And I'd go, so what? What does it matter? What does it matter? Don't you ever wonder? And I'd look at her and go, don't you ever wonder? Why we're here, what the point of all of it? And she'd go, no, I don't. I'm trying to raise 2 kids on my own. You signed on for some things. You're not delivering. I can't make the money you make. We have a mortgage based on that. If you want me to go out and make a living, we're going to have to, sell the house. We have to sell the car. We're going to do all this stuff. And I agreed with her. I said, I get it. I understand. I wouldn't want to be married to me. I understood that. And that's why I told her on the side of the road, you're out. She goes, what do you mean? I go, you deserve better than me. Oh. I'm trying, but I don't know what to do. I don't know. I was waiting for that one thing to click. And evidently it was just getting on my knees and surrendering completely, just going, I'm done. If you are who you claim to be, take me. Do with me as you will. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm exhausted. And the next day I woke up and it was interesting. I was sitting on the end of my bed. I had my kids with me. I was in a club in Arlington, Texas. And they were in the living room watching cartoons or something. And I was sitting on the end of the bed, and something was different. It was like you've heard the term lightness of being. Mm-hmm. It was almost euphoric. And I believe me, I was a cynical, sarcastic, snotty human being. And to feel like, wow, this feels good. What is it? And then I kind of, in my mind's eye, I saw this valley. And this little thing in my mind says, I was here, I was here, I was here, I was here. And there were like 3 or 4 different incidences in my life where I could have lost my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh yeah, I gave my life to Christ yesterday. I wonder if this is it. You know, and it is. It's the peace. I mean, it really is. This whatever veneer of filth laid over me, my sin was cleaned off or whatever, and whatever the heaviness was. And you know, that's kind of, you know, and believe me, I had a honeymoon period, and then I got back into a lot of my old behaviors. And you know, this wolf for the last 22 years has it's someday maybe I'll, you know, write a book about that, because I think there's this naivete that you give your life to Christ and all of a sudden, you know, it becomes this Tony Robbins seminar. All this stuff just starts coming. Well, a year and a half after I gave my life to Jesus, my wife gets diagnosed with cancer. Didn't put that in the list,
right?
You know, but I remember Tammy saying something to me. She goes, I couldn't have gotten through this without that relationship. And we had friends of ours who are non-believers go, how could you believe in a God who would allow this?
Well,
and then Tammy says, I couldn't have got through it without that belief.
Right.
And she had an amazing attitude. You know, I whine if, you know, well, you know, men, you know, you know, I get a sore throat. Man. I can't mow the lawn.
It's a little touch and go. They just
a little scratchy. I have to hire somebody to come in and mow the lawn this week. I can't do that. You know, I got a hangnail. Oh, this hurts. I
can't do it. I just do it. And, I want to say that too about Tammy. Tammy probably had her own list of things in her life too. So you put the two together. There were maybe, I don't know Tammy's story, but maybe repressed things and you're both just trying to coexist.
Well, here's the way it was explained to me, and this is brilliant. Like, I was in the recovery and I'm going, it's not going well. I'm telling people, I'm going, you know, I thought my marriage would get better. It's actually getting worse. And the counselor explained it to me like this. She said, when 2 neurotic people get married, their neuroses fit perfect. Yeah. Round pegs, round holes. Now, one of you get into recovery and your pegs get a little oval because you're shaving around the size of that. So they don't fit quite anymore. And now you're trying to jam these non-fitting holes into, you know, and one of the things we used to do, one of the dances we used to do is that I would act out, break something, smash something, and then apologize. And that was a dance we did. I'd mess up, screw up, apologize. Well, then all of a sudden I wasn't reacting the same way to things, and I wasn't screwing up and apologizing. And Tammy would push harder to get the reaction.
So relatable.
Yeah, get harder to push, you know. So anyway, once we became aware of all of that, we could at least stop halfway in and go, look, we're dancing again.
Yep, dance floor. Yeah,
let's step back.
The dance floor. Don't get on the dance floor.
You know, and you know, if you're married, 90% of your arguments are never about what they're about.
Yeah,
it's just stuff that builds up over a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and then, you know, all of a sudden you drop a piece of bread on the floor and the butter side lands on the floor, and all of a sudden there's this huge explosion.
Yeah,
and you go, it ain't because the butter side hit the floor.
Yes, I often refer to it as it's like the gunpowder of all the experiences in your own life, and then the damage that maybe you've done to one another, and then the baggage that you're building up, and then it just explodes, and it's that residual effect.
Yes.
And it's interesting how, you know, a lot of comedians too, that use comedy just to cope and to laugh it off. And you said you were the youngest child, and it was just kind of coping mechanism just to make them laugh. And
the good-natured one, John Bradshaw. Yep, John Bradshaw's books on family dynamics. It's fascinating. I love family dynamic. You know, a friend of mine does a routine that I think it's Taylor Mason. Does a great routine where he says, "Where's my oldest children?" And you get this very polite, you know, of course, you know, oldest. And he goes, "Where's my youngest?" And then the babies all go, "Woo, woo," because that's the baby of the family. And then he
Right.
goes, the middle child. He goes, "Yeah, nobody cared about you." So.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's well, there's something to that. All of a sudden, the middle child was the baby and got all the attention. And then the baby comes along, and then all of a sudden, it's just
Yeah.
not the same amount of attention.
I love Taylor because he's so great with puppets, and it's funny, just that metaphor there. Like we're walking through life a lot of the time, just feeling like a puppet, just trying to doing what we're told, and we have to. I love your story, what you were just alluding to, that you had to. I'm going to back up and say, people always say, well, okay, well, I have the same problems, same things going on in my life. Now, how? And what you were explaining is the journey. You had to get to the end of yourself, literally and figuratively, on your knees saying, I'm done. I can't do this on my own anymore. And boy, does that just take the onus off of ourselves when we're just trying to figure it out. We're running around like that gerbil on the wheel, just spinning and spinning. And it's like, we got to get to our end of
we don't even realize we're dancing to, issues from decades ago.
Right.
And responding to hurts and pains and things from decades ago. And again, it's not a blame game. I never once blamed my parents.
No.
I know you'll never convince me that my parents didn't love me with all their heart and soul. They were just wounded people as well, and they did what they could. And we were wounded, and we tried. Tammy says it almost weekly. Gosh, I wish we could get our kids back to. We'd be so much better now. We would be. We'd be a lot more patient. I'd be a lot more centered on them than on me, for sure. But the fact that they still talk to us, I think, is a plus.
I love your joke about your dad. You're like, what are we going to do? What's my dad going to do? You want me to re-raise you, or what are you going to? That's your joke about teenagers. Which, by the way, I'm going to put that clip in the comments because it's so funny. But you know what, Jeff, and to Tammy as well, and anybody watching, it's not going to be squeaky clean going through. And the best stories, the best learning is when our kids get to watch us maybe do it. Is it even in the wrong way? I don't know. We're just doing all that we knew. And like I said, there's generational chains. They watched you break generational chains, and it was not easy. Like you said, not to make it elementary. It doesn't happen overnight. They watched your journey, and we sometimes want to do it over again, but would we? Because then where's the beauty in the lesson?
No, not at all. And it's my son. I've been able to help him. I told him on his wedding day, I said, I don't have a lot of money to give you as a gift, but I can give you this. We put things in you beyond your memory. You can't remember.
Yes.
And I said, your wife will draw them out. And I said, you're going to find yourself reacting in certain ways that are unbecoming of the man you want to be. And that's when you can come to me and I'll explain some things to you.
And what better?
And over the years of his marriage, he's come to me, and he's working his own stuff through.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's like one of those things you look at your kids and you go, why did you pick that up? Of all the traits I have, why was that one? And but I'm proud of my son for willing to work through them, and try to be a better husband and a better father to his daughters, and again, the generational chains.
Yeah.
And that's what I told him. I said, you'll be better than me. And I pray that. And then I hope your children will be better than you.
Of course.
And eventually you'll get to those couples. You see those families, the fathers and the mothers, that you go, wow, they got it right. They're just good at it. They're just natural. But it didn't come, in our case, it didn't come without picking at the scabs, and you gotta deal with the wounds, and that's the hard part. But once you make the decision, and then you realize you can't do it alone, and you reach out for help, whether it's the alcoholic drugs, that's the beginning, and then the programs that are out there they work. They really do work, and again, I'm a testament to that. I would be here without them.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the Bible too, but I want to go back and say that you've not only helped your kids learn these truths, you've helped other men. And a lot of women have emailed you and said, I went through the same thing with my husband. And so you've been helping people. This is part of your story. It's part of your journey. you've been able to help people all over just with your comedy to help them feel that joy and that laughter that we need, but also to just, they respect you so much. And then to hear your story, man,
well, those are the seeds, I always look at myself as a seed planter, I never expect, even when I'm in a church and I tell people, I don't expect thousands of people to come running up to this and throwing themselves on the ground. But I'd like to think that when they leave, especially if they're non-believers, that there may be something to this, and then for it to crack open their mind a bit, maybe even move them from atheism to agnosticism, to where they don't know, and then let God work in the crack, in the mind and the heart, and again, you start paying attention to people that come into your life. One of my favorite stories is Wonderful Life, in that movie where Jimmy Stewart is praying at the bar and for help. And anyway, somebody goes, "What's the matter, Mr. Bailey?" And the guy goes, "Bailey?" And that was the teacher's husband. And anyway, he called Cox and just punched George Bailey right in the mouth. That's an answer to his prayer.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, in hindsight, you look and say that leads into the bridge, it leads into Clarence, it leads into all this stuff. But that was the answer to the prayer, was a punch in the face.
Yeah, exactly. It's not always pretty. And sometimes that's what we need.
Sometimes we God answers our prayers not in the way we want. But, and they're not always pain free. But in hindsight, you can look back and go, "Wow, I really needed that punch in the face."
That's why. It's not always pretty, but that's why I'm such a firm believer in there being a difference between religion and relationship. Sometimes it's that punch in the gut. It's that surrendering, that I'm just going to show you the way that I need you to see this. I have had people on the show that have lost a lot of weight, and they will show before and after pictures, before and after. And you both refer to yourselves as those people, which is so cool. Right. Those people, the prior, before. Love
we meet people and they'll go, "We met you like 30 years ago." We go, "We're sorry."
Hey,
we apologize. We weren't the kind of couple you would have had over for a friendly game of scruples. We would fight openly and loudly in public. We didn't care.
It's not about what people know. It's not about textbook knowledge. People don't want to know. Maybe they want to know what you know, but they don't want to know what you know until they know where you've been. And that is why you guys have such a powerful story. We're going to wrap up here, but I just want to say, for anybody that's watching and they're hearing your story and they're still like, "I don't know where to begin." Okay, I'll give this and God knows the journey and maybe how they'll discover him. But what would you recommend just to start? Would it be reading the Bible? Would it be just surrendering? What would you say based on your experience?
Well, one, reach out. If you're isolated and alone, find people, and healthy people. And if you have someone in your life that for whatever reason you look at and go, "Boy, they seem to have it all together," or whatever, again, reach out, and begin on your knees with prayer. It's a simple prayer. Just remove me from the bondage of self, so that I may better do thy will. That's it. Just get me out of myself. I'm the reason I'm here.
Yes.
And let's start filling that hole with God. And with relationships and friendships, healthy ones. If someone's in your life that causes you distress, continuously get them out. Cut them loose. And it's hard. It's hard. We get kind of into a pattern of and it's interesting. I just saw something on a TV. Somebody was talking about COVID. Because it separated friendships. You were isolated, and they didn't realize that there were 2 or 3 close friends in their life, how toxic they were until they were out of their life.
Yes.
And then now that they were getting back in their life, they said, "No, I don't want you around me anymore. I don't want this anymore." You didn't even know it. All of a sudden, it's just they're in your life and all this. But when they get out, you go, "Wow!" All of a sudden, I'm feeling kind of good about myself.
You can love from a distance. That's why boundaries, and I know you learned it in your recovery programs. Boundaries are so important. It doesn't mean you have to, you're not saying that. You don't have to hate people or shun them, but just have that healthy boundary and eliminate it, because it's it's just feeding. It's feeding what's going on in life. Oh my gosh, Jeff, I could talk with you forever. I am so thankful for you telling your story and sharing your vulnerability and this such a relatable occurrences in your life.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It gets a chance to let God do his work.
Without a doubt. I want to put, this is how people can find your website, Jeff Allen Comedy.
That's it. Yeah.
Yes, JeffAllenComedy.com. You guys, I know you already know Jeff Allen. If for some reason you don't, you look him up on YouTube. My husband and I sat and just laughed forever, and our neighbors love you. Yeah. And Dry Bar, yes, Dry Bar for sure. Get the app, right?
Yeah, and I'm traveling a lot. I'm doing a lot of clubs. So if you're out there, just check the website for dates. I'm going to be at Zany's in Nashville on Saturday, May 1st at 4 o'clock. It's my Blue Plate special show for us seniors. I always say I'll get you home before the babysitter gets to your medicine cabinet. So.
Well, in my case, before I fall asleep.
Well, last night we put a movie on at 8 o'clock. We have guests over visiting, and we paid for the $20 for the first run movie. Tammy goes, I'm not spending 20. I go, it's $20, babe. We'll be fine. So anyway, all of us fell asleep an hour into it's a good movie. And by 9 o'clock, the two guests were crashed out sleeping. Tammy was looking at me like a drunken rooster.
Exactly. I know that feeling.
So we paused it. We said it's bedtime. It's 9 o'clock. So we're gonna finish it. We're gonna finish it today. That's it.
That is the thing about marriage. I want to write a joke about that, about marriage and Netflix. Like David and I try to watch The Chosen together, and it's just watching a show together is just a series of "Are you awake? Are you awake?" And then the next night going, "Did you see this? Did you see this? Should we keep fast?"
Well, that's what. It annoys me because I said, look, I'm not going to start this if you're going to fall asleep. I'll be fine. And 20 minutes into it, because then the next night I got to watch the same thing all over again, and
he watches with his head down at the other end of the bed, and I'm up there. I'm promising, and all of a sudden I can feel it. I'm going, going, and then he's watching.
I could tell you this: if Tammy lays in her bed, it's over in 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Once she leaves the living room, and it's funny because she'll go, "Let's go finish this in bed." Which, in other words, you're going to bed. Oh no, I'll be fine.
I know.
And I'll hear that I call it the snorkel. And I go, okay, she's out, man. That's it. I can put on Golf Channel now, so I can watch what I want to watch.
Yes, that's the husband's ticket. Now he gets to watch his Jordan Peterson, whatever he wants. I'm out. I'm done. Yeah. Oh, and then we deny that we're sleeping. I love it. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. Hang on one sec. I want to talk to you, and you've been a blessing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just cut you off. What did you say?
That's all right. I said, God bless you.
God bless you as well. I'll be right there, Jeff. One sec. What power in that message. What power in that message. I loved his story. I hope that you related with this. If this is, it doesn't have to even be, he's talking about alcohol and substance abuse or anger. What is your story? That's what this show is all about, is what is your story? What are you going through? He was talking about how we live with this veneer of filth over us. Isn't that the truth? Don't we feel that way sometimes? And that's what I was saying in the beginning, is we feel that that's it. Game over. Story's over. But that's where, like I said, our problems are always part of our story. But that's when we start to believe that our story becomes our problem, and it's not the truth. God wants us to live with this beautiful veneer of peace and joy. And I love Jeff's how we have to surrender to our own self. Know that we don't have all the answers. It's that, and it's not to sound elementary. Like Jeff said, sometimes it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. So if we go forward and go 10 steps back, that's just part of the journey, because look at what happened with Jeff and Tammy Allen in their life and their story and their kids. And for generations, the world is going to be affected by everybody that was part of the seeds that they were able to plant in this world because of their story. That's what the show is all about, telling vulnerable, relatable stories so that all of you, all of us can glean the hope and inspiration from the beautiful people that are willing. And I am so thankful for the people that are willing to share their stories on the show. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you to all of you. And until next week, I pray that you have a beautiful week. And if you're giving yourself a hard time, just back off of yourself. Give yourself a break. find the peace, and start the process toward surrender, because we don't all have all the answers. I'll talk to you all later. See you next week. Bye, everybody.